warlocks and witches in a dance, Satan glowered and fidged full fain, and hotched and blew wi' might and main. Or later of Hawthorne, of all who artfully summon the lost supernatural from the depths. So Goethe's Walpurgis Night, with its old witch like a split tree, with ungeheures Loch, conscious revival, rousing the unconscious. Wer heute sich nicht heben kann, ist ewig ein verlorener Mann. But the Goethe who tangled with the Middle Ages in Strasbourg became the classicist of the 1786 Roman journey, of this inkwash of the Palatine, as of the iambic dramas Iphigenia and Tasso. It was a year after his return from Rome, and in the vein of classical command, that he began the soliloquy of wood and cave, Wald und Höhle. Exalted spirit, you gave me all I prayed for. Nature for a kingdom with power to feel and to enjoy her. Though what follows is the converse gift of the indispensable devil companion, so from desire I stagger toward enjoyment, and in enjoyment languish for desire. Those classical sketches brushed with the storm and stress of a Vesuvius in eruption. That cloven one is the crux of Goethe's power. It is what inspired also in Rome Faust's rejuvenation in the witch's kitchen. In architecture, Goethe and his age passed the rift to the Romantic century, the Gothic adoration which would complete, as at Cologne, cathedrals abandoned for centuries, the temple dream that would row the American East and South with columns. Schinkel best exhibits it, this sketch of a burial chapel for Queen Louisa, 1810, against his columned museum, or Watch under the Lindens, or more tellingly, this unconstructed royal hall for the Acropolis of Athens, as Faustian a flight as Hölderlin's toward a land he would never see. Sacred Greece, feast hall floored with ocean, tables, mountain peaks, lifted time out of mind for a destined coming. But where are the thrones and temples, where the vessels brimmed once with nectar, delight of the gods with song? Aber die Thronen wo, die Tempel und wo die Gefäße, wo mit Nektar gefüllt Göttern zur Lust der Gesang. In blending classic and Gothic, Goethe culminates what began in the Renaissance. Witness his Bacchic chorus, rhymed as in medieval Latin, with which Mephistopheles' spirits sing Faust asleep. But in this 1525 Altdorfer, the drunken left panel is subordinate to the fall, of which it is one of the sinful consequences. Pagan joy was as islanded as in the songs and dances of 1520 Sinful. By 1753, when Tiepolo frescoed the bishop's palace in Würzburg with the lustful gods of Olympus, the sacred dependence had been broken. As in Vivaldi's seasons, opulent autumn fruits around us, it may well have been some such tour de force rapture of vaulted sky which suggested the opening of Goethe's Bacchic fantasy, Das Einschläferungslied. Let the stone dark arches vanish above us, smiling reaches of blue ether crown us. German Baroque churches, too, had featured those lighted openings through which angels melodiously unrobed smile like girls at harvest home, bright forms of heaven in the Faust poem. The architect who decorates the chapel in Goethe's elective affinities copies the pure sky and angels of early Renaissance. Mantegna stands at the source of such a vanishing of vault into blue. Thus the spirits to Faust. Schwindet ihr dunkeln, wölbungen droben, reizender Schauer, freundlich der blaue Äther herein. In the dissolved space, a pagan harvest opens, like that Pontormo frescoed for the Medici. But a flutter with wings and robes over arbors of lovers, as in Watteau's Rococo Cythera. Then grapes and wine, earth pouring streams of wine. Could Vivaldi's autumn have swelled to Beethoven without the Goethean vision Disney would vulgarize? For us, let the pastoral scherzo and the Faust vintage advance through 3 centuries to the earth meltings and soul wingings of 1810 Runge and 1880 Börcklin. If the clouds would give place, through sundered blackness stars would glisten, suns without number, milder than ours, heaven's plumed powers in beauty and yearning bend and sway to us. How the blown garments of gossamer cover meadows of clover, bowers where lovers hushed in fervor wreathe love forever, arbor on arbor, green leaves and tendrils, and harvest clusters of grapes heap panniers. Crushed in presses the red juice gushes, foams into torrents of blushing bright wine, streams that rush down crystalline channels, leave peaks and highlands gleaming behind them, spread into basins of ponds, lakes and bays, breiten zu sehen sich ums Genügen grünender Hügel. Und das Geflügel schlürfet sich Wonne, flieget der Sonne, flieget den hellen Inseln entgegen. Shores flanked with pastures, flower slopes of pleasure, there the winged creatures skim purple ocean, dip, sip, and rising soar into sunlight, bank over islands wave borne on billows that lap the shallows, hear clear voices from echoing hollows, in choirs rejoicing as they dance and scatter. Some, air nimble, climb sheer mountains, in mussed fountains others are swimming, while sky flights hover on pinions of azure, all singing, all craving life, and the far-figured stars of loving rapture and grace. Andere schweben, alle zum Leben, alle zur Ferne, liebender Sterne, seliger Huld. Is Börcklin's the last phantom of that hypnosis? When Faust, stunned by the first embrace of Helen, is stretched again in northern darkness, homunculus hovering above him reads his dream, a description of this 1530 Correggio, which had come from France to Germany in 1763, after it had been wilfully damaged and in part repainted. Goethe did not know that the 3 nudes are all Leda at different moments of the story. Clear waters in a grove, and girls undressing, all beautiful, but one the rest surpassing. A royal line laves her foot in crystal. What rush of beating wings in the watery mirror! The maidens flee, the queen in tranquil play sees the prince of swans glide to her knee. This avoids the abstract violence Yeats would give the scene. A sudden blow, the great wings beating still above the staggering girl. Yet Goethe's Correggio myth speaks a related symbol. Helen, born of this coupling, is the spirit of Greece. Faust dreams of that under Gothic vaults, as Goethe yearned for the Italian journey. Faust to Helen in Arcadia. Know yourself a child of Godhead, the primal world, your paradise and home. How far Blake's primal world, Vala and Jerusalem lifted in the lily of Havilah over the sea of time and space, has put off the outwardness of Goethe. Not even the love-fragrant lily of Hölderlin's Farewell to Diotima is so visionary. Stunned I gaze at you, voices and sweet song, as from former times I hear, and the sweep of strings, and golden over the brook, the lily breathes fragrance upon us, und die Lilie duftet golden über dem Bach uns auf. Hegel. The essence of spirit is freedom, self-contained existence. History is the exhibition of spirit in the process of working out the knowledge of that which it is potentially. In the German nations, the spiritual becomes reconnected with the secular and develops this latter as an independent organic existence. Freedom has found the means of realizing its ideal, that man as such is innately free. Not Goethe, not Hölderlin, einmal lebt ich wie Götter, not Hegel, lived spirit more freely than Blake did. Yet how far his river of life gleams in the dusk of their temporal hopes, Hegel's state, Faust's land won from the sea, Hölderlin's coming of the gods in Germany. It is the modern, leery of historical promises, who takes to eternal Blake. Though Goethe has closed Faust, whatever that may mean, with the transient alikeness, the unattainable achieved. Alles Vergängliche ist nur ein Gleichnis, das Unzugängliche, hier wird's Ereignis. He had opened it, though the prologue in Heaven was not written until 1797, with a takeoff on Job, a book Blake would engrave near the end of his life. When Goethe's three archangels praise God's ordered realm in the manner of that famous ode by Addison, the spacious firmament on high, with all the blue ethereal sky and spangled heavens, a shining frame, their great original proclaim. Goethe. Die Sonne tönt nach alter Weise in bruderschweren Wettgesang, und ihre vorgeschriebene Reise vollendet sie mit Donnergang. Und alle deine hohen Werke sind herrlich wie am ersten Tag. Which Shelley translates, the sun makes music as of old amid the rival spheres of heaven, on its predestined circle rolled with thunder speed. The world's unwithered countenance is bright as on creation's day. Blake bids the right foot striding Satan of fiery energy throw down that deist clockwork of natural law, of which the family of Job in material prosperity cling to the proscriptive letter. In Blake's latter end of Job, the books of natural religion are closed, and the instruments of inspiration have replaced them. Similarly, when Faust's curse has destroyed the old world, the Spirit's counsel, build it again, in inwardness, in deinem Busen baue sie auf. How can Goethe's Mephistopheles, a rationalist mocker from the start, to be used and tricked by the world-shaping passions of Faust, claim those spirits as his? What powered the Faust wave in history was doing Blake halfway, and turning that half to a dialectic of earth gain. It was the conversion of transcendental inwardness to revolutionary leverage. No one in the wake of Kant, Faust, Hegel, not even Nietzsche, was ripe for Blake's Newtonian overthrow. The outward creation to me is hindrance and not action. It is as the dirt upon my feet, no part of me. Consider Faust's attempt to translate the opening of John, en arche en ho logos, in the beginning was the Word. He balks that mere word, Wort, should rate so high. Has he not resolved in the opening scene not to traffic in what Hamlet called words, words, words? Of course, there is a theological position suggested by this 1100 Spanish creating God as symbolic hand, according to which the ineffable speaks only by the sanctified and transrational, which Faust has deposed. From creed-invested word, he turns to a kind of Platonic reason as cause. Im Anfang war der Sinn. So in the 13th century reliefs of Chartres, God, making birds, sees Adam in his thought. The mystery has moved into the world, but in idea, not physical. Can it be merely thought, Faust asks, which works and creates? He writes again, Im Anfang war die Kraft. In the beginning was the power. Michelangelo, type of the creating divine, has always led the conscious titans of history, Milton, most of all Beethoven. He seizes on art like a more productive Faust. Yet, as the translation power still separates prime mover from effect, Michelangelo shaped his giants in creed acceptance of the rounding of the wheel. What made Goethe say, I cannot even relish the essence of Michelangelo, since I cannot see with such great eyes as he did. In fact, Michelangelo claimed less. His power was above, not within. However he may lean that way, his is not the hand of God. Turning from the external and pre-existing Kraft, Faust cries, the Spirit helps me, I see my way, and he writes, in the beginning was the act, Tat, the uncaused and immanent deed. Cause becomes one with creation, Faust, and now, as the hand of God is Rodin's hand, it's Adam and Eve, the lovers he had made. So with Melville's Ahab, is it I, God, or who lifts this hand? That is the terminus of incarnation, that raising of the flesh snake, Mephisto, strong man, and all, on spirit's creative rod. The history of the world for 3,000 years, Goethe said of Faust too, though that history, comprising part one, is also the nautilus shell of the poet's own life, shaped by the two souls struggling in his breast. So Hegel's spirit works itself up by the self-war of alienation to what but the world consciousness of Hegel himself. That actualization of what spirit is potentially has for Hegel historical phases dawning east to west and variously named and numbered. The Orientals know only that one is free, the Greeks and Romans that some are free, German Christendom that man as such is free. But there are also the ages of man, Oriental childhood, Egyptian and Persian boyhood, Greek adolescence, Roman manhood, Western renewal in age. That this Peking altar of heaven was rebuilt in 1897 would not ruffle the timeless childhood of Hegel's Only One is Free. With China and the Mongols, he writes, the realm of theocratic despotism, history begins. Individuals remain mere accidents. Outside the one power, there is only caprice, no subjectivity. Of how many millennia is Hegel speaking? And how to fit his tyrannic formulation to the musing subjectivity of silk scroll fact? Tao Wan Ming in the mountains, painted 900 years after by Chao Meng Fu. But Hegel's Orient breaks in two, China rigid one, India flowing all. He writes, a wild chaos of fruitless variation, which must appear as madness to a duly regulated, intelligent consciousness. Everything, sun, moon, stars, the Ganges, the Indus, beasts, flowers, everything is a god. Spirit wanders into the dream world, and the highest state is annihilation. A marvelous antithesis, and no doubt with truth enough for Forster to have made it the theme of a passage to India, not to mention its appropriateness to this gate tower of the Meenakshi temple in Madras. But that is 17th century, and art lush. What reconciles the boom of Malabar Cave to the 5th century, when India had assimilated the Greek, Hegel in reverse, and was expressing itself in a fine consistency of Buddhist forms, from classical Gupta heads to the precise observance of Ajanta frescoes? One cannot deny that the living center of Hegel is the sequence of Greece and Rome to the birth of Christianity. There he knew and loved all the texts and some of the art. In Greece, he writes, the idea is united with a plastic form, immediately bound up with the real, as in a beautiful work of art. The sensuous bears the stamp and expression of the spiritual. This kingdom is consequently true harmony, the world of the most charming but perishable bloom. And when he moves from that geniality and joy of soul to the abstract universality of the Roman state, in which the social absorbs all individual aims, with Augustus and the Aeneid, that shift, mediated by Plato, from outward nomoi to a brooding responsibility which both trains and hollows the soul for the subjective morality of Christendom, at that point we know that Hegel has either made or discovered an elixir of historical truth. So we follow him, but find that his hatred of the medieval was so great, a truculent delirium of passion renounces all that is worldly, and devotes itself entirely to holiness, that all we can learn from him about the cathedral age, this 1290 tomb of Rudolph of Habsburg in the crypt of Speyer, with its gaunt repudiation of what Goethe and Hegel stood for, is that such an antithesis must arise in man's consciousness of the holy to establish the empire of thought actually and concretely. In short, the Middle Ages had to be lived through to get to Hegel. So wherever we see a massive human dignity emerging in the consciousness of spatial right, as in Giotto 1321, or Dante at the same time, I crown and mitre you lord of your own, and we were not made to live like brutes, fatti non foste a viver come bruti, we nod the head and say Faustian precursors. As the Renaissance heightens, the head wags increasingly, as for this Leonardo sketch, with his proud words, O thou that sleepest, what is sleep? Sleep is an image of death. Oh, why not let your work be such that after death you become an image of immortality, as in life you became when sleeping as one of the hapless dead. Wags for Bruno toward the giant century's end. There is no need to cast the eyes toward the heavens, to raise the hands, to frequent temples or intone to images. We have but to enter into the inner self, remembering God is nigh, with us, here, within us, the soul of souls, life of lives, essence of essences. Comparing this Steinmüller, Apostle Simon, around 1585, when Bruno, in his farewell address to Faust's University of Wittenberg, was foretelling the rise of German mind and spirit. Here is being prepared the soil for the transplanting of wisdom from the lands of Greece and Italy. May Jupiter grant that the Germans may recognize their strength and aim for the highest, and they will no longer be men, but rather reasonable gods, for godlike is their genius. It is what Hölderlin, schoolmate of Hegel and Schelling, now felt happening around and in him, as the Zeus eagle from Indus and Parnassus and the votive hills of Italy, exultant over the Alps, wings on at last, and sees widespread the many-patterned lands. An inebriation that swells in the 17th century self, as in Law's chromatic pavin or Milton's dynamic truth. If our waters flow not in a perpetual progression, they sicken into a muddy pool of conformity and tradition. Point of departure for Blake, the man who never alters his opinion is like standing water and breeds reptiles of the mind. Such Faust's dying strategy. He only earns his freedom and his life, who takes them every day by force. Nur der verdient sich Freiheit wie das Leben, der täglich sie erobern muss. A wave to break in Hölderlin. Look, we are it ourselves, we, fruit of Hesperia. the godlike burden from which, stretched to madness, his blind singer prays to be eased. O nimmt, dass ich's ertrage, mir das Leben, das Göttliche mir vom Herzen. Take from my heart, that I may bear it, life the godlike, take from me. While the self-portraits of Runge and Friedrich from about 1800 to 1810 witness in art the romantic polarity which Goethe's dread hand hammered into Faust. But between the Baroque claim and the Faustian lies the ironic transition of 18th century, Gluck's Don Juan, Pigault's fastidious modelling of the encyclopedist Diderot, the mephistic limitation Faust must override, though even that eddy looks Hegelian, a secularization for which spirit had again to be driven back on itself. So the ironic debacle exemplifies a threefold dialectic of Aufhebung. It cuts off the God-reasoned confidence of Baroque, turning Leibniz to an absurd Pangloss. But in that stepping down, it sustains, under the mask of secular wit, the bill of human values formerly delivered as divine. Yet to be so sustained is also to advance. Ironic sensibility, even in Diderot, transcends itself, as if in some future tense, aufheben, to upheave, looked to the Faustian quest of heart. Like Goya and Blake, Goethe is born to irony. So here I stand, a poor fool, as wise as when I went to school. The fruit of all my study and art, this ignorance that burns my heart. But it is an irony which,